My name is Mila. That day my husband, David, looked straight into my eyes, gave a cold smile and placed the divorce papers on the table. He said, "I found someone else. She deserves to stand by my side." My heart shattered, but the pain didn't stop there. That woman was none other than Sophie, our closest friend, the one I trusted the most. After more than 10 years of sacrificing everything to build a family and support my husband's startup, I was abandoned, left with nothing, and forced to leave the home I once called my haven with a small child in my arms. Have you ever been looked down on, betrayed right after giving your whole heart to someone? Share your thoughts in the comments so I know you understand. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to follow this story. Before everything collapsed, my life could be summed up in one word: sacrifice. When I was young, I had dreams of my own: to become a financial analyst working for a major corporation in New York. I graduated from college with decent results and received a few appealing interview offers. But then I met David. Back then, he was a young man with little money, a heart full of ambition, and a business idea no one believed would work. I loved his boldness and faith. When he said, "With you by my side, I know I can make it," I stayed by him without hesitation. I thought, what could be more beautiful than starting from scratch with the man you love, step by step building a future together? So I turned down the opportunities in front of me and chose to walk with David. In the early years, we lived in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember nights when little Ethan cried endlessly, and I would rock him in my arms while sitting at a shaky wooden table, jotting down every figure and financial plan David handed me. He would spend his days running to meet clients and investors, often coming back empty-handed, exhausted, and irritable. I was always the one to soothe and encourage him. I still remember one stormy night. David came home, his shirt soaked, tossed his briefcase on the table and sighed, "No one believes in this plan. They think I'm just some delusional startup guy." I handed him a cup of hot tea and gently said, "Then let me believe. We don't need everyone, just one investor at the right time. You've already come halfway." David pulled me into his arms and whispered, "You're the only reason I haven't given up." That moment made me believe I had chosen right. I raised Ethan almost entirely on my own during the years David threw himself into work. My son grew up seeing his mother always there while his father was often absent. I didn't complain because I trusted that his sacrifices would eventually bear fruit for our family. Some days Ethan would ask, "Mom, why doesn't Dad come home for dinner?" I held back my tears, smiled, and stroked his head. "Dad's working hard so one day we'll have a bigger, nicer house. You can eat with me, sweetheart." Ethan believed me and I tried to believe in David. But slowly that faith began to crack. As David's company went from small to securing big contracts, I noticed changes in him. He came home later and instead of returning weary and in need of comfort, he carried an air of distance, of coldness. He spoke less to me and even the smallest matters at home barely drew his attention anymore. Once I showed him Ethan's first drawings, our family in a sunny garden. Proudly I handed it to him. "Look, Ethan drew us all. He misses you so much." David glanced at it, set it aside, and kept staring at his phone screen. "I'm in the middle of an email meeting. Leave it there." My heart sank. I began asking myself, where was the man who once held me in the rain and called me his only reason not to give up? The more David's company grew, the further apart we became. I was still the one handling everything at home, from Ethan's schooling to every meal, every bill. I barely had a moment for myself. Sometimes when I looked in the mirror, I no longer recognized the woman staring back. Hair hastily tied, dark circles from sleepless nights, and eyes that had lost their old spark. Once I tried to start a conversation with David. "Do you ever think if I wasn't here taking care of everything, you wouldn't have so much time for work?" He looked up, his tone sharp. "There you go again. I'm working for this family too. Don't make things heavier than they are. Everyone has their role." Those words cut deep. Was my role forever to be the shadow behind my husband, raising our son, sacrificing my dreams only to be forgotten? I remember sitting on the balcony at night when Ethan was asleep, looking down at the rush of car lights, haunted by a question I feared to answer. Who am I besides being a wife and mother? David was home less and less. Family dinners, already rare, became non-existent. When I asked, he said there were urgent meetings or important clients. But my instincts as a wife told me the distance wasn't only about work. I saw it in his eyes. Affection for me had faded. Still, I stubbornly clung to hope. I poured myself into caring for Ethan, making him the only reason I kept going while everything else turned hollow. Sometimes my mother, Lydia, would advise me that women should accept their fate, be grateful for a successful husband and a complete home. I stayed quiet, never argued. But deep down I felt trapped in a life others thought was happiness. I began to dream of another life. A life where I could be myself, not dependent, not standing behind anyone. Yet each time I thought of stepping out, fear held me back. I had abandoned my career, spent too long being only a wife and mother. Would anyone still believe in me? David became even more consumed by his own world. I remember when he returned from a long business trip, Ethan ran to him, hugged his legs and shouted, "Dad, I missed you so much." David bent down, hugged him briefly, then set him down and walked straight to his office. I saw the smile vanish from my son's face. That night, while putting Ethan to bed, he whispered, "Mom, does Dad still love us?" I held him tightly, tears falling where he couldn't see. The cracks grew more obvious, like small fractures spreading silently through a wall. I tried to patch them, to cover them, but deep inside I knew, sooner or later the wall would collapse. David filed for divorce on a Monday morning, before sunlight even reached the window. He placed a thick envelope on the dining table where I had just set breakfast for the family. His voice was dry, steady. "Mila, I think we should end this. The papers are ready. You just need to sign." The spoon in my hand trembled and dropped to the floor. Ethan, sitting across from me, stared wide-eyed at me, then at his father. I fought to steady my voice, though my heart felt crushed. "What are you saying, David? And this? After everything we've been through?" David didn't answer right away. He adjusted his shirt collar, avoiding my gaze. After a long silence, he said words I'll never forget. I have someone else. And I want to be with her." I didn't need to ask. I already knew. Sophie, the woman I once welcomed into my home, trusted, and called my best friend. Ethan burst into tears, the sound slicing through the heavy air. I held him close, soothing him while David stood there wordless. That afternoon I was forced to leave the house I once called home. I carried a few sets of clothes, some personal belongings, and a small suitcase. Ethan clung to my hand, terrified, as if everything familiar to him had just disappeared. I turned back for one last look at the house. The framed photos on the wall, the simple courthouse wedding, our first picnic with Ethan when he had learned to walk, all still hung there. But to David, those memories seemed to be nothing more than meaningless decorations. "You should go early," he said, eyes looking away. "The lawyer will contact you." I wanted to scream, to ask him when love had turned into such cold betrayal. But in the end I only whispered, "All right, David. You've made your choice, don't regret it." The days that followed were a long stretch of darkness. Ethan and I moved into a small, run-down apartment in the suburbs. It had only 2 bedrooms, the walls stained with yellow patches. Ethan wasn't used to it, and every night he asked, "Mom, why aren't we in that house anymore? Where's Dad?" I squeezed his hand tightly, choking back tears. "You have me, Ethan. We'll be okay." But deep down I knew nothing was okay. News of David and Sophie going public didn't take long. Pictures of them holding hands outside a fancy restaurant in Beverly Hills flooded social media. Sophie wore a tight red dress with a proud smile, while David looked at her with the same gaze I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. An old friend sent me that photo in a message with the words, "Mila, are you okay?" I don't even know what to say. My chest ached as if stabbed over and over. Strangely, no tears came. Perhaps they had all dried up the day I carried Ethan out of that house. In the first weeks, pain and humiliation consumed me. I had lost not only a husband but also my trust, the family I thought would last a lifetime. When my mother, Lydia, heard about it, she sighed, "My dear, sometimes women must accept their fate. David has his career now. It's natural you couldn't keep him. Just focus on raising your son." I bit my lip until it bled. Had all my sacrifices never been valued, not even by my own parents? Ethan was the only reason I didn't collapse. Every morning when he hugged me and whispered, "I love you, Mom," I knew I had to get up even if the whole world had turned its back on me. One afternoon as I picked Ethan up from school, I saw David's luxury car parked at the gate. Sophie sat inside, leaning toward him, laughing. David stepped out, saw me, and gave a curt nod. Mila, we need to talk about custody. I hugged Ethan tightly and calmly replied, whatever you want, say it to my lawyer. Sophie smirked, her eyes gleaming with challenge. That look cut through me like a blade. I turned away, refusing to let them see the tears welling in my eyes. That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The sound of passing cars mixed with Ethan's steady breathing made the room feel even colder. I asked myself, what did I do wrong to deserve this? Why must a woman who gave everything for her husband and child walk away in shame, while the betrayers flaunted themselves proudly in public? But then I realized, the answer had lost all meaning. What mattered was that my son and I had to keep living, had to find a way to stand strong in this storm. When David introduced Sophie to the family, I heard it through a relative. My father, Edward, called me, his voice uneasy. Mila, I know you're angry, but David is still Ethan's father. No matter what, you should keep the peace for your son's sake. I froze, feeling abandoned all over again. Even my own parents chose to side with David. I quietly replied, Dad, I don't want to argue. But if you really love me, think about Ethan. He doesn't need a father who betrays us. He needs a mother strong enough to protect him. My father fell silent. I knew he had nothing more to say. Time passed and David and Sophie grew more public. They attended parties and events together, never avoiding the cameras. One day, I read an online article, The New Power Couple of Los Angeles Business. I let out a bitter laugh. That power was built on betrayal and my tears. Each time Ethan clutched his old teddy bear and asked, Mom, why doesn't Dad come home anymore? My heart tightened. I didn't want him growing up in lies, but I also didn't want him to hate his father. I held him close and murmured softly, You have me. And I promise no one will ever hurt you again. Perhaps in that very moment, a new door opened. The door to a path David and Sophie would never expect me to take. The early days in our small rented apartment in Los Angeles are memories I'll never forget. It was on the third floor of an old building, the hallways always heavy with the smell of damp paint and cheap food from neighboring units. The living room window was cracked at the corner, whistling whenever the wind blew like a lament. Ethan asked, Mom, why is our place so small? I don't see a backyard to play ball. I hugged him and forced a smile. Because this is our new beginning. We may not have a backyard, but we have the whole city outside. One day I'll take you somewhere bigger. Ethan believed me and I tried to believe in myself. On his first day at the new school, I felt the strange looks from other parents at my plain clothes and worn-out sneakers. I think that's David Taylor's ex-wife. He's with Sophie now. I lowered my head, holding Ethan's hand tightly, pretending not to hear. But my heart burned as if each word carved into my skin. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I sat alone on the old chair in the living room, staring at utility bills and the lease contract. The balance left in my account made me dizzy. I knew I had to find a job fast or soon we'd have nowhere to live. I began applying everywhere, from convenience stores to small offices. After many rejections, I finally got hired at a mid-sized tech company specializing in cybersecurity for small businesses. I worked part-time, mostly doing data entry, checking documents, and helping the tech team with simple tasks. My manager, a middle-aged man named Mark, handed me a temporary contract and said, We can't pay much, but if you're willing to work hard, you can learn new skills here. Thank you, Mark. I'll do my best. On my first day, I felt like a beginner all over again after more than 10 years revolving only around husband and child. The lines of code on the screen, the technical jargon my colleagues discussed, all overwhelmed me. But instead of discouragement, I felt a small flame rekindling inside. I had studied finance, I knew how to analyze. Why couldn't I learn again from the start? At lunch, I was eating a homemade sandwich when a young colleague named Rachel took the seat beside me. New here? I'm Rachel, a programmer. I smiled and shook her hand. I'm Mila. I'm part-time. Rachel looked at me for a moment, then said softly, I heard Mark mention you once helped your husband build his company? Don't underestimate that. You might be better than a lot of people here. Her words, even if polite encouragement, warmed me. It had been so long since anyone acknowledged that I had accomplished something. Evenings after work, I was busy with Ethan. I helped him study, cooked the simplest meals, then once he was asleep I opened my old laptop and went online to study more about cybersecurity and basic programming. The glow of the screen in the dark room was proof of my effort. Some nights I was so tired I collapsed on the desk, but when I thought of Ethan's smile, I woke up and kept going. Once Ethan woke up in the middle of the night and saw me still at the screen. He rubbed his eyes and asked, "Mom, what are you studying?" I turned, stroked his hair. "I'm studying so I can take better care of us. Go back to sleep." Ethan nodded, hugged his teddy bear and went back to bed. Still the struggles piled on. Part-time pay wasn't enough. I had to stretch every dollar, cut every unnecessary expense. Some days, with only a few cans of soup left, I gave it all to Ethan and drank water myself. One afternoon at the grocery store, I bumped into an old college friend, Angela. She looked me up and down, frowning slightly. "Mila? Oh my God, you've lost so much weight. Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. Just busy." Angela wanted to say more, but her pitying eyes made me want to run. I didn't want anyone I knew to see how far I had fallen. The more I was pushed into hardship, the more I understood one thing. I couldn't go back to living in David's shadow or my family's. Back when I was in that big house, I thought I was safe, but in truth I had lost myself. Now, even if I had to face scarcity, at least I was in control of my own life. Some mornings after dropping Ethan off at school, I would pass by David's old company building. The lights gleamed outside, the sign was brand new, and once I saw David and Sophie step out of a car laughing together. I stopped and watched from a distance. Anger rose in me, but mixed with it was determination. I would not let my life be forever tied to the name David. One evening, Mark unexpectedly called me into his office. "Mila, I've noticed you're diligent and a fast learner. The company has a small project that needs someone to audit security data. Want to try it?" I froze, my heart pounding. "But I don't have much experience." He smiled. "Opportunities always start with the first time. I believe you can do it." I took that project and spent many nights digging, researching, and taking notes. When I finished, Mark nodded. "Good job, Mila. You've got the knack." That simple sentence made me feel alive again. After years of being dismissed, I was finally recognized for my own effort. My new life was full of hardship and loneliness, but little by little I learned to stand firm. In that isolation, I began to find something I'd never had before: inner strength. I threw myself into studying like someone starving for knowledge. By day, I worked part-time at Mark's company. In the evenings and late into the night, I opened my computer and sat before the screen with countless tabs of online courses. I bought used books on programming and information technology online, their pages yellowed but still packed with knowledge. Some nights Ethan woke up and saw me at the laptop, eyes red, and asked, "Mom, aren't you sleeping?" I quickly pulled him close, tucked him into bed, and smiled softly. "I'm studying so I can give you a better life. Sleep now, Ethan, I'll be right here." He hugged his teddy bear and fell back asleep, and as I looked at him, determination surged through me. I couldn't let Ethan grow up in want. Even more, I couldn't let my life be bound to pity. After a few months, I realized I had a particular strength: financial analysis combined with tech. I had studied finance, helped David handle the books in the company's early days, and now with new tech knowledge the pieces started to fit. One evening, staring at my messy budget, an idea struck me. Why not create a mobile app to help people like me manage personal finances more simply and clearly? That idea kept me up all night. I scribbled on scrap paper, sketched diagrams, and wrote the first lines in the programming language I'd learned. I decided to name the app Clear Budget, a simple, easy-to-understand name that reflected what I and so many others needed: transparency in personal finance. At first, the app had a few basic features. Enter income and expenses and categorize them by food, transportation, tuition, and so on. I tested it using the numbers from my own tight life. And, miraculously, when I saw the chart showing what I had actually spent that month, I could clearly spot the waste I had never noticed before. I carefully showed Ethan. "Ethan, look. This is the app one made. See? Every dollar I spend shows up clearly. That way we know how to save." Ethan lit up. "Then Mom, can I log the money I saved to buy a new bike?" I laughed. "Of course. You'll be my youngest user." I kept improving the app, adding alerts when spending went over budget and a feature to save financial goals. I shared it with Rachel at work. She was amazed. "Mila, you wrote this yourself? Wow, that's brilliant. Lots of my friends complain about managing expenses. If they had this, they'd love it." Rachel even introduced me to a small startup group in Los Angeles. At first I hesitated. I used to be afraid of stepping into a new world. But I understood that if I kept everything to myself, the app would stay trapped in my old laptop. Those first startup meetups made me both anxious and excited. Young, energetic faces everywhere, each person with a project in hand. I introduced myself, my voice trembling. I'm Mila, and I'm building a personal finance app called Clear Budget. An independent investor in the group, Jonathan Miller, asked right away, "What sets your app apart?" "The market isn't short on finance apps." I answered steadily, "The difference is simplicity." I was a mother with nothing left, a small bit of savings and a child. I know what it feels like to be overwhelmed by numbers. Clear Budget is designed for people like me. You don't need complex financial knowledge. One glance tells you where you stand. The room fell quiet for a moment, then Jonathan nodded. Rachel smiled at me in encouragement. I worked relentlessly. I went to my job by day, cared for Ethan at night, and once he slept, I went back to coding. Some nights my hands shook with exhaustion, but I didn't stop. Clear Budget gradually took shape. An easy interface, intuitive charts. After 3 months, I decided to release a free beta on a tech forum. Unexpectedly, within weeks, there were thousands of downloads. Users sent emails thanking me, saying that thanks to my app, they had saved a significant amount for the first time. One email brought me to tears. A single mother wrote, "Mila, I don't know who you are, but your app helped me have enough money to buy my daughter a birthday present for the first time. Thank you." I printed that email and taped it to the wall beside my desk. That was the reason I wasn't allowed to quit. When Jonathan asked to meet privately about an investment, I was both nervous and thrilled. At the meeting, he got straight to the point. "I see potential in Clear Budget. Mila, have you thought about turning it into a real company?" I paused. I thought I was building a small app to save myself. But now someone believed it could be bigger. I looked at Jonathan and said firmly, "Yes, I will." He smiled and held out his hand. "Then I'm ready to make a seed investment. But the company has to be in your name. This is your chance to be the owner, not stand behind anyone." I gripped his hand. Inside me, fear and fire spread at once. That night, I told Ethan, "Sweetheart, I'm going to start my own company. I'll be the owner and Clear Budget will be our first product." Ethan's eyes shone. "Mom, can I help? I'll be your app tester." I hugged him, laughing through tears. "You are the reason I'm doing all of this." So from that old apartment, I officially founded a small company. I registered the business, rented a desk in a shared office in Los Angeles, and put up a sign with the name Clear Budget Inc. For the first time in my life, I wasn't David's ex-wife, nor a shadow in an old marriage. I was a woman beginning to rise from the ashes. Clear Budget's success came faster than I expected. A few months after founding it, the app was featured in a major tech magazine in California. I still remember that moment. In the morning, Ethan ran into my workspace holding a newspaper and shouted excitedly, "Mom, look. You're in here. They wrote about you." I took the paper and saw my photo from the product launch. Beneath it was the headline, "Clear Budget, the finance app built by a single mother, is changing the way Americans manage money." After a lifetime under someone else's shadow, my name was finally called. Not alongside David, not with the words "ex-wife of." But as the spotlight began to spread, my own family came calling. One evening after I finished feeding Ethan, my phone rang. It was my mother, Lydia. Her voice trembled. "Mila, can you come home to visit? Your father and we have something to tell you." I was surprised. Since the divorce, she had rarely called, except to scold me for not keeping your husband. But this time her voice was urgent. I agreed. The next day I took Ethan to my parents' old house. It looked more run-down than before, peeling paint, a yard overgrown with weeds. In the living room, my father, Edward, sat with his head down and my mother wrung her hands, eyes red. "Mila," my father began haltingly, "the construction company we invested in has gone bankrupt. I've lost nearly all our savings. The bank is threatening to foreclose on this house." For years, my father took pride in his financial savvy. Now he sat there fragile, needing me. My mother cut in, her voice pleading, "My dear, I know I didn't take your side before. But now, only you can help us get through this." I clenched my hands. Where were they when I had to carry my child out of the house in shame? When I lived on instant noodles to make rent? Now that I had a bit of success, they came back hoping I would save them. Ethan gently squeezed my hand, looked up and whispered, "Mom, do Grandma and Grandpa need help?" I couldn't bear to hurt my child, but I also couldn't go back to being a shadow who sacrifices unconditionally for others. I spoke slowly, "Dad, Mom, I understand your hardship. But I've learned one thing. Everyone must take responsibility for their own choices. I can't shoulder your financial mistakes. I had to stand up on my own after being abandoned by my own family. And now I'll let you find your own way to stand up." She sobbed, "Mila, you've really changed." "No, Mom," I answered softly. "I haven't changed. I found myself again." I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. A few days later, the phone rang again. This time it was David. I hesitated a moment before answering. His voice came through, still confident but laced with worry. "Mila, I heard you started a company? Clear budget or something?" "Yes." "So what?" David sighed. "My company is in crisis. Investors are pulling out. The projects Sophie managed have failed. I know what you can do. I want you to come back and help me turn it around. You're the one who understands how to build the foundation best. David, the day you signed the divorce papers and threw me out, you gave up everything related to me. Why should I save your company now? Because you owe me. Without me, you wouldn't have had a chance to enter tech." Those words made me shake with anger. I answered firmly, "No, David. Without me, you wouldn't have had a company in the first place. Have you forgotten who stayed up nights writing line after line of code while you just worked the phones chasing investors?" I could hear his breath quicken on the other end. Finally, I spelled it out. "David, I don't owe you anything. I've built an empire of my own. I rose from nothing without you and without family. And I'll keep going forward, not looking back." I hung up before he could say more. That night, alone in my small office, I looked at the clear budget logo on the wall. Outside, Los Angeles still glowed, loud and vast. I knew the storms weren't over. When you rise, envious and greedy eyes follow. But this time I wasn't afraid. I had learned how to live, no longer anyone's shadow. Ethan ran in and hugged me. "Mom, are you busy again?" "But I finished my homework by myself." I smiled and kissed his forehead. "You are the reason I do all of this. And I promise, no matter what happens, I'll never let us go back to those old days." I never imagined the truth could hurt this much, even though I was used to being betrayed. But the deeper I went into the documents that the law firm partnering with Clear Budget sent over, the more I realized. David hadn't left me for Sophie. He had quietly orchestrated everything to seize what should have been mine. One afternoon, while Ethan did homework in the living room, I sat in my small office with a thick stack of files in front of me. My lawyer, Karen Lewis, calm but sharp, pointed to each financial schedule. "Mila, see this? These line items were set up before you and David divorced. He transferred assets from your joint account to a string of shell companies under Sophie's name. Legally, that means you were stripped of your rightful interests." I clenched my hands, my stomach twisting. He planned it before he threw me out. Not only that, I hired a team to re-audit the records. There are sham contracts, even altered electronic signatures. This is strong enough to bring to court or I can go public. So everyone sees who they really are. In the days that followed, I quietly gathered more evidence. I reached out to Rachel, my former colleague at Mark's company. She whispered over the phone, "Mila, you have no idea. I met a vendor who said David forced them to sign opaque contracts. If you need testimony, I can ask them." So what I'd suspected wasn't about an affair. David had turned my work, my family, and my reputation into a con. Ethan happened to catch me staring at a screen full of spreadsheets. He asked innocently, "Mom, why do you keep looking at numbers? Is something wrong?" I smoothed his hair and gave a sad smile. "I'm working on something important, Ethan. So you won't grow up surrounded by lies." The chance to confront them came faster than I expected. A week later, David hosted a fundraising gala for his company on the brink of collapse. I received an invitation by email, clearly not from him but from an investor who knew me. A note was attached. "Mila, you should come. This is the right time to speak." That evening, I wore a simple, structured black dress and walked into the hotel where the gala was held. Crystal lights blazed overhead. Familiar investor faces murmured in clusters. In the center of the room, I saw David and Sophie both trying to look confident. When I appeared, eyes turned. I heard whispers. That's Mila, the founder of Clear Budget. I thought she disappeared? David stiffened, then regained composure and approached. Mila. What a surprise to see you here. Not a surprise at all, David. I came to return the truth you tried to hide. When the MC introduced David to speak, I waited until he started waxing on about the company's future, then stepped onto the stage. A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Sorry to interrupt, I said, my voice clear, but before you invest, you should know a few facts. David blanched. Mila, don't make a scene here. I raised the folder high. These are copies of the sham contracts David Taylor used to transfer joint assets into Sophie Carter's name. Here is proof of altered electronic signatures. And this, I projected the slide on the big screen, is a detailed ledger of covert transfers from this company to shell entities. The amount siphoned is in the millions of dollars. The room erupted. Sophie went pale, gripping her glass so hard it nearly shattered. An investor shot up. David, is this true? David stammered. This is fabrication. Mila is out for personal revenge. I stepped forward, my voice firm. If I'm fabricating, let the court verify it. I've submitted everything to my attorney and the authorities. Tonight, I want those who trusted you to know the truth. Chaos spread. Some people left at once. Others pulled out their phones to call their lawyers. Sophie tried to hold it together, but under the crowd's furious stares, she snapped and shouted, David, you promised me everything would be covered up. You said no one would find out. The mic was still on and everyone heard her. David froze and I stood calm as if justice had finally returned to me. That night I got home late. Ethan was still up, waiting on the couch. He ran to hug me and asked softly, Mom, did you win? I held him tight and whispered, It's not about winning or losing, Ethan. I told the truth. And the truth can't be hidden forever. He rested his head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt truly light. After the night the truth was exposed, my name appeared across the news. Mila Anderson, founder of Clear Budget. But in the days that followed, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. This time it wasn't investors or journalists. It was the very people who once turned their backs on me. One afternoon, just as I was leaving the office, my mother, Lydia, was waiting at the door. She looked gaunt, hair disheveled, eyes swollen red. Mila, she called softly, her voice breaking, I'm begging you, can we talk? I paused for a moment. I remembered clearly the day I was thrown out of the house. My mother turned away and let me leave with Ethan in my arms. That image is still etched in my memory. I have nothing left to say, Mom. I walked quickly. But she grabbed my hand, trembling. Your father is seriously ill. The bank has sent a foreclosure notice. I know I was wrong before, but please, my child, help us just this once. I looked straight into her eyes. In them I saw panic and collapse, but absolutely no understanding for the years I was belittled. Mom, I said slowly, when I needed a hug, you turned your back. When I was thrown out, you told me to take responsibility. Now I'll say the same back to you. She burst into tears, but I stayed calm. I wasn't the old Mila anymore, the one who had once begged for her family's acceptance. Not long after, I got a call from David. His voice was hoarse, the arrogance gone. Mila, I know you won't forgive me, but the company has officially gone bankrupt. Sophie is gone. And he paused as if swallowing hard. I have nothing left. Could you give me a chance to make amends, even if it's just to work with you? I laughed, but there was bitterness in it. David, don't you understand? I don't need you to kneel and apologize. I don't need your redemption. The only thing I demand is respect. Something you never gave me throughout our marriage. Now it's too late. A heavy sigh sounded before the line went dead. That evening, I told Ethan everything in the gentlest way I could. My son looked at me, more serious than his age. Mom, will you forgive them? I shook my head lightly. No, sweetheart. Forgiveness isn't an obligation. I choose to let go so my heart can be light. But I won't give them the chance to hurt me again. Ethan squeezed my hand. I understand. As long as you're happy. A few days later, I was invited to a panel about women in tech. Hundreds of attendees, most of them middle-aged women. Some had gone through broken marriages, loss, and being looked down on by their families. When I stepped onto the stage, the lights shone straight at me. I took a deep breath and shared, I once thought family was the place that would never turn its back on you. I was wrong. When I lost everything, they let me leave alone. And when I succeeded, they came back hoping I would shoulder their mistakes. I'm not here to complain, but to say one thing. We don't need forgiveness from those who never valued us. The only thing we need is respect for ourselves. After the panel, my mother came again. She didn't beg anymore, she stood at a distance. I understood that some gaps can never be filled. But I no longer held resentment. I walked on with a light heart. I didn't look back, not out of hatred. My true happiness no longer lay in the hands of my family or David. It lay within me and in the hope shining in Ethan's eyes. I still remember the first morning after everything. I woke in my own bright apartment, no more pounding heart from fear, no more jolting awake at night thinking about the day I was thrown out. Ethan was still sleeping soundly, his messy hair spilling over the pillow. Clear Budget was growing rapidly. International investors were reaching out, and major magazines were praising the app as a revolution in personal finance. But what made me proudest wasn't contract numbers or new investments. It was the team I built, mostly young people, many of them women who had once been overlooked like I was. One afternoon, I held a small meeting with the whole company. I saw the bright faces of our employees. People who had been underestimated, now standing tall in a company claiming its place. We're not building an app, I said firmly. We're creating opportunity. Opportunity for those who were left behind, misjudged, or forced to stand on the sidelines. Clear Budget will always be a place that gives them a rightful seat. I caught the shining eyes of Sarah, a young Latina engineer. She once told me she had been rejected by 3 major companies for lack of real experience, despite her outstanding talent. Now she was one of the pillars of our newest project. After the meeting, Sarah came over, eyes brimming. Mila, thank you for believing in me. Without you, I might still be working a temporary job in a coffee shop, trying to keep a broken dream alive. I smiled and laid a hand on her shoulder. Sarah, you proved yourself. I gave you a chance, you turned it into success. Outside the company, I began spending more time on community programs. I partnered with local universities to organize free courses for women who wanted to pursue tech. One evening, after a talk at UCLA, a student approached me. She had curly hair, glasses, and bright, determined eyes. Mila, I used to think women like me had no place in tech. But hearing your story, I realized the opposite. Thank you for giving me hope. Don't ever let anyone make you think you're not worthy. They can doubt you, but you must never doubt yourself. My personal life also settled. Ethan grew up in a completely different environment. No more arguments, no more scenes of a mother silently enduring. I wanted him to see a different model. A woman who can stand on her own, who doesn't need anyone else to define her worth. One evening, while we cooked dinner together, Ethan suddenly asked, Mom, can I work at your company when I grow up? If you want to, of course. But I want you to choose your own path. You don't have to follow in my footsteps to make me proud. As long as you live by what you believe in, I'll always be proud. Ethan nodded, eyes shining. But I think I want to build something with you. I see what you did, so I can do it too. Those innocent words made my eyes blur. I understood that beyond all the external success, the most precious thing I had built was my son's faith and dreams. More and more, I realized my presence wasn't only in a company but in the community. I was invited to speak at tech conferences and women founder panels. But instead of talking about revenue or strategy, I often began with my life story. From the cramped Los Angeles apartment, from the days of instant noodles with Ethan, to the moment of betrayal and standing back up. I shared, success isn't about never falling. Success is having the courage to rise even when the whole world turns away. I'm here not because of luck, but because I refuse to give up. Every time I spoke, I saw women's eyes in the audience light up. I knew that somewhere someone would begin to believe she could too. One morning at the office, Karen, my lawyer, walked in with a stack of papers. She smiled. Mila, I wanted you to see this. Forbes Women just named you to its list of 50 inspiring women in tech this year. I was a little surprised, then smiled softly. Titles and awards had lost their shine for me. What made me proud was the journey behind them. From nothing, from humiliation, from loneliness to a steady place today. I looked up and saw Ethan peeking in from the doorway. He grinned mischievously. "I told you, Mom, you're a superhero." I laughed out loud. Maybe it was true. But I wasn't a superhero because I was perfect. I was simply a woman who knew how to stand up after being pushed to the bottom. Looking back on the road I'd traveled, I knew the most valuable thing wasn't big contracts or headlines. It was that I had found myself again. From a woman abandoned and penniless, carrying her child out of a family's door, I rebuilt my life and, more importantly, gave Ethan a model to believe in. His mom could be strong and so could he. I don't carry blame anymore. I choose to let go so my heart feels light, and I choose to stand tall so those who once belittled me are left in quiet recognition of my worth. Perhaps all of us have faced moments of being undervalued, abandoned, or betrayed. But in those very moments, our true strength is born. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between forgiving and letting go? If you were in my place, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. I believe every story has the power to reach someone else. If you feel a connection and want to hear more journeys about family, betrayal, and the strength to rise from ruin, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. There are many more stories waiting to be told. Stories that might mirror your own experiences or those of someone you love.